Good evening. I'm Nima Rajan, and this is Forum Daily for Wednesday, January 11th. And we begin tonight with more air travel disruptions. Air travel across the U.S. was thrown into chaos today by a computer outage. The ripple effect stretched north of the border. This with Air Canada advising all passengers bound for the U.S. to check the status of their flights before heading to the airport. The White House initially said that there was no evidence of a cyber attack behind the outage, which led to the cancellation of hundreds of flights and the delay of thousands more. U.S. President Joe Biden says he's directed the Department of Transportation to investigate. All right, well, meanwhile, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau gave a keynote speech on the relationship between Canada and Mexico today on his final day at the North American Leaders Summit. Mr. Trudeau talked about the importance of all three nations working together in unison while renegotiating a North American free trade deal. His address came ahead of a meeting with Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. All right, well, this comes as the U.S. Embassy in Ottawa is expressing concern about the Trudeau government's online streaming bill. It says that the bill could discriminate against American businesses and affect digital streaming services. Spokeswoman Molly Sanchez-Crow says the embassy is consulting with American companies about Bill C-11. The bill, which is now before the Senate, would require online streaming platforms such as YouTube, Spotify, and Netflix to help create and promote Canadian content. Switching gears to a cybersecurity incident, which has knocked out the website and mobile app of the Liquor Control Board of Ontario. The LCBO posted a brief statement to its social media pages last night, saying a full investigation was underway. The Provincial Crown Corporation says its website and mobile app are unavailable, but in-store service is unaffected. The latest incident comes on the heels of a December ransomware attack at Toronto's Hospital for Sick Children. Turning to moves by Alberta's new Democrat opposition, which wants public consultations on a government plan. The much criticized plan would subsidize oil and gas companies to fulfill legal commitments to clean up old wells. Under the R-Star program, companies would earn valuable credits for remediating old wells. This even though cleanup obligations are part of their licenses. A Manitoba bus manufacturer is announcing layoffs just weeks after the company got a $50 million loan from the provincial government. Pink slips were handed out at New Flyer Industries in Winnipeg. The company says it hopes the 30 layoffs are temporary. New Flyer employs about 2,500 people in Manitoba. It says it has been severely affected by COVID-19, supply chain interruptions, and inflation, racking up $230 million in losses since the start of the pandemic. On the East Coast, employees of 7 private ambulance services across Newfoundland and Labrador have taken work-to-rule strike action. About 120 paramedics represented by the Teamsters Union are involved in the job action. Union business agent Hubert Daw says the phased-in approach means the public will not see a disruption in service. Mr. Daw says the main issues are wages and the lack of a pension. Meanwhile, Nova Scotia food banks and community groups are calling for an immediate increase in income assistance. This is for the growing number of residents in a state of crisis who cannot afford housing or food. Nick Jennery, executive director of Feed Nova Scotia, spoke to a legislative committee about this. He said that the massive demand for food was highlighted over the holidays. This was when his network helped to feed a record 20,000 residents over Christmas. Data from the 2021 census shows that Nova Scotia is tied with British Columbia for having the highest rate of poverty in Canada. The federal government is offering a new tax credit to help make it easier for Canadians to care for adult relatives in their own homes. The multi-generational home renovation tax credit took effect on January 1st. It is for expenses related to building a self-contained secondary suite for a family member who is a senior or an adult with a disability. The credit will provide a 15% tax refund on expenses of up to $50,000 to a maximum of $7,500. And the Girl Guides of Canada have chosen Embers as their new name for its adventure group for girls aged 7 and 8. The organization says the name change from Brownies is effective immediately in an effort to become more inclusive and welcoming. The CEO says it will take several months for the name change to be updated on various websites and marketing materials. Stay with us. Forum Daily will return shortly. After the break, a look at cryptocurrency scams and how to avoid them. We'll have a conversation with Dr. Aditya Nain up next, so stay tuned. Forum Daily will be right back after a short break. Nova Scotia's security regulator says a cryptocurrency scam has cost more than 20 residents a total of $750,000 since last fall. The regulator says victims receive text messages, emails, or social media messages with an ad for crypto trading. They were persuaded to deposit money into a crypto trading account, then download software giving scammers access to their personal and financial information, which was later used to steal more money. The regulator says little can be done to recover any of the stolen cash. Well, with us to discuss how to identify scams in the rapidly evolving crypto sector is Dr. Aditya Nain, published author, financial writer, speaker, and business owner. Dr. Nain, welcome to Forum Daily.
Thank you, Nima. Thanks for having me here.
So in this rapidly evolving world of crypto, how secure are these investments in terms of fraud and scams?
So the crypto space is rapidly evolving and it's growing in size, but it is the wild west of the investment world. And just like with the real wild west, there's a lot of lawlessness. So scams are rife, and it really is mostly in the hands of crypto investors and holders themselves to make sure they don't get conned. And unfortunately, that's the reality of the matter. So it's really down to the security of the exchange on which you're holding your cryptocurrency at one level, but it's also our personal responsibility to figure out the best way to hold our crypto. And a lot of it really comes down to investor education and awareness. So, for instance, I almost got scammed, even though I know how crypto works. I know what the pitfalls and mistakes are. Luckily, I didn't go through with it, and I realized what I was doing. But you need to be ultra vigilant in this space.
All right, Dr. Nain. Now, how significant are crypto scams in Canada? We've been hearing a lot of about telephone scams, texting scams, but what about the crypto scams? Are they on the rise?
Yeah, so the crypto scams, according to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Center, the CAFC, is among the fastest growing and the most worrisome from their perspective, because con artists and scammers in this space are using all the methods and means of communication available to them. So, for instance, it could be a social media scam through Instagram, but the way in which they're getting your money could be crypto. But it could be a telephone scam, and still they want your money through crypto. Or it may be a good old phishing scam where you get sent an email and they ask you for your crypto exchange username, password, confidential information such as, let's say, your wallet keys. Those are the keys through which scammers or con artists can get access to your crypto. So it is on the rise according to the CAFC. And in fact, in 2021, over 1,000 Canadians, about 1,100 Canadians, reported scams, crypto-related scams to the CAFC. And by mid 2022, I don't have the updated data for 2022, but it had already passed the 21 numbers by half of 2022. So things are not looking great. And according to the same organization, only about 5% of Canadians report the scams if they've been found, if they've been a victim of these scams. So one can only imagine that it's in many hundreds of millions worth of scams.
Some very concerning information there, Dr. Nain. Now, as you mentioned, you were almost scammed with a crypto scam, but you knew what to do to identify it. So how can crypto investors identify a scam? Are there any questions that they should ask? Is there any key pieces of information that they should know?
Absolutely. So the first rule of thumb, I would say, is don't entertain unsolicited calls, emails, DMs, or messages of any kind in the crypto space. This is true if you got an investment. I mean, say you got an investment call, an unsolicited investment call in the stock space, someone trying to sell you a stock, and you didn't quite know who it was. Most of us wouldn't take them seriously, and we'd immediately know it's a scam because we're not, I mean, we're used to tight protections, and we know that nobody's randomly going to call us and try and sell us a stock. Well, not anymore, anyways. But this happens in the crypto space. So if someone's asking you for your money to make an investment, and if it wasn't your decision to approach them in the first place, so beware, just back off. It's better be safe than sorry in these circumstances. um, be very careful about which links you click. So if you've received an email and if the email is well masked and it seems as though it's from your crypto exchange, make sure you verify the link. There are online free link verification softwares and websites available. You can just run your link through that and it'll decode and tell you whether it's a clean link or not. um, Keep a call identification app on your phone. That's important. I mean, that saves us from a lot of crypto and non-crypto scams. And if it's too good to be true, then it's probably not worth your time and you shouldn't fall for it. So you need to be vigilant and don't entertain DMs, because the crypto space is rife with online social media fraud. And so there's a lot of impersonation, not only of celebrities, but also of company representatives.
It's been almost 2 years since the initial discovery of unmarked graves at multiple former residential school sites in Canada, but the topic of reconciliation continues to be a pressing issue. The discovery of 200 unmarked graves in May 2021 sent shockwaves throughout the country and the world. And since then, over 1,800 confirmed or suspected unmarked graves have been found. The echoing calls for change and accountability brought out a papal apology for the Catholic Church's role in the residential school system last summer. But advocates say there's a lot more to be done. Joining us now to give us his perspective as a residential school survivor and intergenerational survivor is Mr. Bruce Allen from the Indian Residential School Survivor Society. Mr. Allen, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Good afternoon.
Now,
Good to be
when
back.
Great to have you back, sir. Now, when news of the unmarked graves initially came out, it caught the attention of the world and the entire country. So now that it's 2023, how has this conversation evolved, or has it potentially stopped completely? What are your thoughts on this?
I think it will take quite probably a number of years for many of the schools to get to the point of searching the school grounds. Uh, for for my own school, the Jack Indian Residential School, they haven't started searching, but the research is starting, and talking to the survivors as witnesses and possible locations for unmarked graves. It's a long process, but there are many other schools that are doing the same thing, and many other communities across Canada that are doing the same thing. And probably later this month, we'll hear from other schools that have uh, found more unmarked graves in their schools, but I don't think it will fall to the wayside as yet. It's going to take a number of years to get through all of the sites and to do it in a good way, and to do it with survivors and with their healing and closure in mind.
Sounds like a very long journey ahead. Now, on that note of a survivor's healing journey, we know the initial discovery of these graves definitely dealt a massive blow to First Nations communities across the country. So, where are these communities at when it comes to this healing journey itself?
There are some communities that are um, hid, hidden it directly with survivors. If they want to go into um, a treatment center, uh, some of our communities are saying, okay, we're going to send you to a treatment center on Vancouver Island and we'll pay for it. And, there's a 3-month commitment for those individuals to do it. And it's good to know that some communities have those types of resources, but again, we're gonna not all of our communities have that kind of resource, and we still are in need of a lot of assistance in our communities with survivors, and not only with survivors, but their children and grandchildren, and so they're reeling as well. And whatever effects that they've experienced from being a child or grandchild of a survivor.
It's clear a lot more work needs to be done now. As a survivor yourself, Mr. Allen, what is your hope for 2023 when it comes to reconciliation in Canada this year?
Well, I work at a college, so I talk to students all the time, and I'm always gauging, you know, what their reactions are. When we talk about residential schools and we talk about the different reactions of get over it is a common um, theme that comes back from the general population to get over it. But it's really hard to do. But I think Canadians from all levels, right from preschool all the way up to post-secondary, should have some information about the residential school survivors today. Bring in those survivors, those remaining survivors. In the next maybe 10 to 20 years, there won't be any residential school survivors, but we still will have the intergenerational um, survivors and the effects they will still experience in the future.
A report by the World Economic Forum says climate change is the global economy's biggest long-term challenge. But it says the issue is being overshadowed by short-term problems led by the cost of living crisis. The group released a global risks report ahead of its annual gathering of government leaders and business elites next week in the Swiss Alpine resort of Davos. The leaders of the United Kingdom and Japan have signed a defense agreement that could see troops deployed to each other's countries. It comes amid growing concern about China's increasing military assertiveness and designs toward Taiwan, which it considers a renegade province. The reciprocal access agreement is Japan's first with a European nation and allows the two countries to hold joint military exercises. And it looks like Russia is still making plenty of money from oil sales, despite a price cap imposed by the Group of Seven major democracies. Now, this is according to researchers at Helsinki's Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, which said in a report on Wednesday that the cap is too lenient at $60 per barrel. Still, the price cap and a ban on most oil shipments to Europe are costing Russia an estimated 160 million euros a day. Now, that is a lot, but Russia is still taking in around 640 million euros a day. Meanwhile, police have entered a condemned village in western Germany, launching an effort to evict activists, which are holed up in an effort to prevent the site's demolition to make way for the expansion of a coal mine. Officers in riot gear on Wednesday moved into the tiny hamlet of Luetzerath, which has become a flashpoint of debate over the country's climate efforts. Environmentalists say bulldozing the village to expand the nearby Gatzweiler coal mine would result in huge amounts of greenhouse gas emissions. But the government and a utility company say the coal is needed to ensure Germany's energy security. All right, turning to the UK now, where thousands of ambulance workers walked off the job today for the second time in a month. Some 25,000 paramedics, drivers, and call handlers are striking over an ongoing dispute with the government over pay. Health officials say the impact of today's walkout will be worse than the one in December because it involves more staff. Union leaders say some of the lowest paid public health workers are close to falling below the national minimum wage. But it's a different story in Zimbabwe, where a new law bans healthcare workers, such as nurses and doctors, from prolonged strikes. It is also imposing punishments of up to 6 months in jail for defiant workers or union leaders. The provision was signed into law by the president last week, but made public now. It stipulates that health workers can only strike for up to 3 days because they are considered an essential service. Some good news in Uganda, where the latest outbreak of the Ebola virus is over. Uganda's government and the World Health Organization made the announcement on Wednesday. Health Minister Ruth Aceng told journalists that no new cases had been registered in the past 42 days. Uganda had recorded 142 cases, including 56 deaths, since the outbreak was announced in September. More weather woes for California as residents in the northern part of the state are dealing with a new atmospheric river led by a new round of thunderstorms. Meanwhile, thousands of people living near rain-swollen creeks and rivers in central California remain under evacuation orders due to flooding and mudslides. Southern California should see more rain this weekend after a brief reprieve. At least 17 people have died since the storms began last week. Meanwhile, Pakistan continues to recover from its major flooding event. The country says more than $9.7 billion in foreign aid has been pledged to the country for flood relief. Premier Shahbaz Sharif says several countries and world institutions made pledges to help his country rebuild. This comes after the deadly and devastating floods that hit Pakistan last year. More than 1,700 people died and 2 million homes were destroyed in last summer's catastrophic flooding. The former and last king of Greece has died at the age of 82. Greece abolished the monarchy in a 1974 referendum, so Constantine will be buried as a private citizen in Tatoi. It is the former summer residence of Greece's royals and where his parents and ancestors are buried. Constantine spent decades in exile before settling in Greece in his later years. And Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin is out of hospital more than a week after going into cardiac arrest during an NFL game. The 24-year-old has been released from a Buffalo hospital after doctors conducted a series of tests. He had been transferred to Buffalo after spending a week at a Cincinnati hospital where doctors say he made a remarkable recovery. All right, I'm Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news. Take care, Canada. We'll see you next time on Forum Daily.